The problematic prince. The prince is embarrassed to take her out. Laughter followed the words. She deserves it. She is too much of a disgrace to Lichen to be seen in Lars. As each word was offered, the sound of laughter grew. Erna had been walking along the promenade that ran around the back of the building. She stopped to enjoy the shade of a tree. Lisa was with her too. The conversation of the two maids drifted round to her. Words that pitted the prince, who was forced to tour Lars all by himself, because the princess was so useless, she couldn't be seen out in public. Those bastards. Lisa spat, and as she went to march on the other maids, Erna grabbed her wrist to stop her. She shook her head at Lisa. The disrespect was incomprehensible. Lisa couldn't resist. Something had to be done, but Erna looked at her with pitiful pleas. While the maids chattered away, Erna and Lisa stayed hidden behind the tree. While Lisa was boiling over with rage, Erna remained resolute. Lisa pouted as she looked down at the long evening shadows. Her mistress Honeymoon was passing them by and Lisa was getting upset by it. Erna had already been left alone for several days in the palace, waiting for her husband with no clue as to when he would return. That was her daily routine, and if she was lucky, Bjorn would join her for dinner. For the most part, Erna was alone for the whole day. There were no gatherings for her to attend and no meetings that she needed to attend. She would spend her days walking alone or with Lisa. It was unfair that she would also have to put up with this disrespect. While Lisa thought about how much she hated the incomprehensible prince, the other maids gathered together and headed off. Only then did Erna let go of her wrist. "Look there," Erna whispered like she had some big secret to tell and pointed up into the tree. When Lisa looked, she lost all of her heated anger and smiled. There was a fat-cheeked squirrel looking down at them from the branch of the tree they were stood under. "You have great eyesight," Lisa said. The squirrel startled at Lisa and ran up into the tree. Erna turned away from the forest of maple trees and faced Lisa. She could see the wide eyes reveal redness in them, and Lisa realized Erna's hands were trembling slightly. There was so much Lisa wanted to say, but didn't have the words. Fortunately, Erna's lapse didn't last long, and she moved on down the path covered in red leaves. They passed the bench where the gossiping maids had sat. Lisa briefly stared at the spot before chasing after Erna without saying a word. The late autumn day was short, and the sun was already casting long shadows. The sky has dyed a bloody red. "Thank you. I am in your debt today," Erna said, closing the book with a smile. "No, Your Highness. I'm just doing my job," Karen said. It was a very bland and formal answer. It was definitely a very different attitude to when she spoke taught the much-praised Princess Gladys, who was, without a doubt, the most perfect princess. "I will get your bath run, Your Highness." Karen left Erna alone. It had been 10 days since they arrived in Lars, and only 3 of those she actually got to have dinner with her husband, if you counted the 1 day of rest they had when they first arrived. Still, it was fortunate that today she knew Bjorn was going to be late home. She would not have to bear the embarrassment of looking shabby after wasting hours waiting for him to return. She casually flipped through her notebook, only half paying attention to what was written on the pages, until she flipped past a diagram that showed the relation between Lars and Lichen's royal families. She had struggled to complete that with Karen's help. She tried her best, but the results were still disappointing. Excluding the nobles that were close to Gladys, there were only a few shabby remaining names. Erna would probably never meet any of them as they had shut themselves away from the social network. Erna closed the book with a heavy sigh. She decided that she would write to her grandmother in the hopes of changing her mood, but maybe they weren't the best choice. "Grandma, I am having a wonderful honeymoon." After that one sentence, Erna struggled to find anything else to write. She couldn't worry her grandmother with the truth. She was also frustrated because she had no idea what a fun honeymoon was, so even a lie was out of her grasp. After a long while, Erna finally had a letter she thought her grandmother would be happy to read. It was laced with several lies. She told her grandmother that Bjorn was an affectionate and caring husband. She found Lars more accepting than she first thought, and she is busy traveling all over a new world. Thinking of how her grandmother would enjoy the letter, Erna smiled. By the time Erna sealed the letter, her bath was ready. At least she knows her duties in the bedroom. The mockingbird's words ran through Erna's head. She wasn't willing to reveal the shame of her husband's marks all over her body. Resolute in her thinking, Erna lowered herself into the steaming bath. When the prince came on his honeymoon with Princess Gladys, they went everywhere together. Do you remember? The two of them were the brightest protagonists everywhere they went. They were a perfect match. Perhaps it was because of the splashing water. The memories came unbidden. Erna stared blankly at the sloshing water, and when she closed her eyes tight, trying to wipe the memories away, they only came on stronger, pushing her to tears. There was a sudden knock at the door. Karen did not come into the bathroom, knowing that Erna wanted to be alone, but she brought good news. Bjorn had returned. Everyone, go away and rest. The maids had followed him to the bathroom and looked at each other as if they didn't know what to do, like they had never gotten such an order before. They hesitated, but in the end, they all retired without question. When the door closed, Bjorn let himself fall onto his wife's bed. She wasn't there. Maybe she hadn't finished her bath yet. Bjorn spread out on the bed, facing the ceiling, and let out a long sigh. It had been a long day that had started with luncheon with the foreign minister. Then it was off to speak to the acquisitions team at the bank. Then finally a little social visit with Alexander, Princess Gladys' second brother. A troublesome day that ended with a splendid finale. As with all three of her brothers, Alexander is very protective of his sister. Bjorn had been constantly pestered by Alexander when he first broke it off with Gladys. Endless threats and promises of retribution, but that was before he knew what Gladys had done. When he was finally told, he only pestered Bjorn more, this time with endless streams of apology. Even tonight, in his drunken, fugue state, he cried and cried on Bjorn's shoulder, cursing fate for driving the best couple in Lars and Lichen apart. Bjorn wanted to argue that it wasn't fate, but a practical joke played by his sister and her poet, but he decided against it. Mostly because he was waiting patiently for the gold coins the prince was going to deposit. It was certainly a decent amount worth showing patience for. How come you married such a woman? Such a woman had become a derogatory term used to describe Erna. It was just funny to Bjorn. It was especially funny as it often came from the mouths of those who supported a princess who had a child with another man. Damn Hartfords, Bjorn cursed. The royalty and nobles were anxious about the Grand Duchess of Lichen standing next to their perfect little flower of Lars. They will never see that kind of woman defeat their princess. Mostly because Bjorn would not let her be ridiculed like that. Bjorn looked over and saw, standing in the doorway, Erna. Fresh from the bath and wearing a bright smile, he thought she looked exceptionally bright today. Bjorn motioned for Erna to sit next to him. She waited patiently for her maids in waiting to leave before entering, then hurried over to the bed. "Are you drunk?" Erna said dejectedly. "No," Bjorn said with a laugh and grabbed Erna around the waist to pull her in close. As she collapsed into his arms and threw her arms around him, Bjorn could smell the sweet scent of her. It was soft scent that softened his heart after spending all day hardening it against the attacks of the nobility. He pulled Erna in close and hugged her. Erna flinched and stiffened, but didn't put up any resistance. "Did something happen?" Erna asked. She had been studying him carefully. "No," Bjorn smiled. It wasn't a lie. The profits he gained for Lichen today were insurmountable. It was a day where nothing could go wrong. even when dealing with Gladys brothers, who were sympathizers to him. That's good. It was a response of distrust, but Erna nodded her head with a smile. I'm fine too. I took a walk in the forest behind the palace with Lisa. Karen helped me study Lars and Lichen's royal family, and I wrote to my grandmother. Erna chatted with a smile, like she was proud of her day's routine. Oh, and I tried the traditional cake of Lars at tea time. It was delicious. Almond cookies too. When I went for a walk, I packed it and shared with Lisa. I also have something to give the SKMF. Bjorn suddenly leaned in and kissed the lips he couldn't take his eyes off. Erna tried to turn over, but was still trapped in Bjorn's arms. A madman, that was Bjorn's self-assessment. How else could he explain how he was running amok around women like he'd never been around them before? He didn't mean to, it was just the way it worked out. He really wanted to know everything about this woman, ever since he first hugged Erna. No, it was when he first heard her sweet voice calling his name. Clearing his thoughts, he looked down at Erna, who was swaying beneath him, with a mixture of desire and adoration. He gripped her soft hair with a firm enough grip to stop her from moving her head from side to side. You are learning well. You should look at me, Bjorn said. Bjorn looked at her anguished face. She was obviously excited, but he could feel her body tense every time he moved into her. Why? Bjorn's eye narrowed with scrutiny. His annoyance at his stiff wife grew as much as it did at not taking the time to get undressed fully. He let out a heavy sigh, bit her shoulder, and then flipped Erna over. Bjorn, Erna protested. Bjorn held her waist firmly and leaned in to kiss the nape of her neck. You're good at this, Erna. Do you not see? He hugged her limp body and whispered into her ear like he was praising a child. Bjorn leaned down and bit into Erna's neck. Erna twisted away from the pain, but the betrayal of her own body was what upset her. The sensations in her body were all a kind of similar pain. She didn't have to be swayed by the gossip of others. She knew what this marriage would entail and what would happen. She was caught in Gladys' shadow on this honeymoon that wasn't really a honeymoon. She was invisible in Gladys country. She was sure she was doing well. He said so. She looked back at her determination to become stronger, and she was. Bjorn gave Erna a delicate kiss on the bite mark he just left and turned her back over. He looked down at her as he pulled off his tie. A satisfied smile spread across his face as he looked down at Erna's beautiful, tiny frame, his straight flush. Enjoying her glistening form, he moved a hand to brush away the sweat-soaked hair from her face. Erna. As he brushed her cheek to try and soothe her, Erna trembled like she had a chill. When he saw the reluctance and the flinching away, he realized something, and a name came to mind. An unwelcome name of a disgusting man. Walter Hardy. The man's face came to Bjorn's mind and overlapped with the memory of a young girl quivering in the rain under the old clock tower, body beaten and bruised at the touch of a disrespectful man. Bjorn looked at his frightened wife with a slightly dazed expression. He felt renewed contempt for Walter Hardy, and shame crept in at his own behavior toward Erna. It's all right, I do like it. It's just a little. Unable to find the right words, Erna reached out a hand and cupped Bjorn's cheek. Her hand looked so small against his face. The fear had risen in her after feeling Bjorn's arousal and the smell of alcohol on his breath. She knew she did not have to fear the man, because she knew very well that Bjorn would never hurt her, but all the same, the feelings came up unbidden. Bjorn. Erna plucked up a little more courage and stroked her fingers through his fine, silky hair that tumbled between her fingers like fine sand. He just sat there and frowned at Erna. He did not try to stop her. Just slow down a little. Can you do that for me? Bjorn looked at her blankly for a moment and let out a long sigh. This situation, this woman. Most of all, he didn't hate anything about it. Instead of answering, Bjorn wrapped Erna's hand around his cheek and kissed her wrist, where he felt her pulse beating. He found himself thinking about Walter Hardy and all the lecherous wretches back home, clambering over themselves like wolves fighting over a helpless doe. They ranted and drooled over Erna, who had been thrust into the marriage market. "Thank you, Bjorn." Erna put her hand on the back of his neck and pulled him in for a kiss. Bjorn lifted his head and Erna smiled. As if to prove her resolve, Erna put strength into her arms and pulled Bjorn onto her. She whispered soft words of provocation. Bjorn was dazed for a moment, but then let out a hot sigh and laughed. It was like he was drunk without actually drinking. The whole affair, which had started in a hasty display of half-adorned clothes, ended in an intimate atmosphere of red haze. Bjorn kissed her flushed face and stroked her wild hair. Every time he did, Erna would look away, avoiding eye contact. She was like a well-behaved seductress. Her ambivalence was both cheeky and cute. Bjorn got up from the bed, but Erna grabbed his arm. He turned to look at the tiny woman. "Don't go. Bjorn, would you sleep here with me?" Though her eyes were soft and pleading, her voice as strong and clear. "Rest, Erna," Bjorn said and gave Erna a kiss. "Come on, let's rest together." Normally, Erna would have left it at that, but she felt a stubbornness build inside her and she was showing no signs of backing down. "Erna, I'm uncomfortable sleeping with someone else." Bjorn removed her hand from his wrist, but she only grabbed him by the hem of his shirt with both hands. "Me too. Then you understand?" "Yes, but we're a couple. Shouldn't we do things together even if they're uncomfortable? They say that a marriage is a journey two people take together down a thorny path." "Who says that nonsense?" "The Archbishop did." In that moment, Erna looked like she was going to cry. She was being persistent and clung to it. Bjorn forgot his irritation and smiled. "Erna, that's a plausible sophistry from a man that has never walked a thorny path his entire life. But he's married to God." Even though she was talking nonsense, Erna was as serious as ever. Bjorn wished he could lay a whole bush of thorns on the Archbishop's bed and see what he made of it after that. "Let's try a little, please." "Why should I?" "Because you are my husband," Erna said firmly. "What does a husband mean to you?" Bjorn's question contained doubts. "It means family, my lover, my closest friend. It's a lifelong companion that supports and loves. They provide dependence, love, hope," Erna said without hesitating. "Did the Archbishop also say that?" Bjorn made up his mind to dress the man in thorns. "No, that's my opinion." That clear answer quickly quashed the chance of war between religion and the royal family. After standing there for a long moment, looking up at the ceiling, Bjorn let out a long sigh. Erna flinched, expecting him to get angry, but she didn't let go of his shirt. "So, if we're planning on sleeping together, are you also planning on bathing together?" "Yes." Surprised, Erna let go of him. "You can go now." Bjorn just stood there and stared down at the young woman. It was because her eyes were filled with such innocence, but also something new, a strength that wasn't there before. Impulsively, he leaned down and hugged her. She hugged him back and then realized what he intended, but was too weak to fight his grasp. He lifted the woman like she was nothing and carried her off to the bathroom to run the bath. It was a deep autumn night when the thorny path began.